Okay, I think we can get started. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our panel discussion. We have a very special group of panelists who just all happen to have one thing in common. They have all been Scholastic Award jurors, and they have a wealth of tips and advice to share with all of you that will be useful as you enter your work to the awards. Before we begin introductions with our panelists, we're first going to kick things off with a quick round of introductions from our Scholastic staff. So I will start. I'm Manny Blasco. I'm the Associate Manager of the Regional Partner Network at the Scholastic Awards, and I work closely with the folks who run your local regional programs of the awards. So now I'll turn it over to my colleagues to introduce themselves, who will be providing support throughout tonight's session. Daniel, would you like to start?
Hi, I'm Daniel Embry. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a program director at the Scholastic Awards and very excited to be here with you all tonight.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jero Enriquez. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the New York City Scholastic Awards manager and an alum of the awards.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Burkhalter. My pronouns are they, he, and I am a programs coordinator with Scholastic, and I'm really excited to be here tonight as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for the wonderful introductions. So as you all know, today we are joined here by 4 panelists from around the country. They are artists, educators, and Scholastic Award judges, so they know their way around art and writing works. I'm excited to introduce all of them very shortly, but first we're going to spend, while we are going to be spending most of this evening session in conversation with our panelists, we're also going to save time after the discussion for an open Q&A, and so we will introduce them shortly. Before then, I just want to go over a couple housekeeping rules. So this session is being recorded and it will be shared after the session, so please don't feel you have to scramble to take notes or anything like that. Closed captioning is available during the presentation, and you should be able to see that button at the bottom of your dashboard if you need to turn that on. And then also one of the probably the most important norm that I have to go over is during this event tonight, we ask that you please, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box, not the chat box, which is separate, to ask any of your questions for the panelists. So that way, when we do get to the Q&A portion of the event later, we kind of have all the questions in one neat space, and that way we can kind of run through all of your questions. Also with the Q&A box, please do use the upvote and comment options as best as you can to avoid duplicating any questions, and then also show which questions that you're most interested in having answered. And then again, after our panel discussion, we're going to turn, like I said, to the Q&A box, and then all of that will be for our panelists to answer. Okay, so now jumping quickly, just a brief overview of our agenda for today. We're going to start with a short presentation, just to kind of give an introduction to the awards, eligibility rules and entry requirements, a quick overview of scholarships available to teens, and then a quick overview of our award selection criteria. But again, the majority of today's session, we're going to be hearing from our panelists. That's why you're here. And then again, at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session to ask our panelists all of your burning questions. And then at the end, we'll just go over some next steps for entering the awards. So to kick it off, quick overview of the awards. Many of you may know, but some of you may not. So the Scholastic Awards is the largest national recognition and scholarship program for creative youth, celebrating the accomplishments of teen artists and writers since 1923. Students in grades 7 through 12, ages 13 and above, are invited to submit works to 28 different categories of art and writing for the opportunity to be recognized at both the regional and national level. Some of our illustrious alumni include Shabalala Self, Stephen King, Kay Walking Stick, Charles White, Joyce Carol Oates, and Andy Warhol. In addition to the recognition, exhibition, and publication opportunities available for students, the award distributes more than $250,000 in direct scholarships annually And in 2021, we received nearly 230,000 entries for more than 80,000 students nationwide. So a little bit about eligibility. As I mentioned, teens who are eligible to apply, they must be 13 years or older and must be in grades 7 through 12. Again, also, as I mentioned, we have 28 different categories of art and writing that teens can enter to. The one exception to this is our art and writing portfolio categories. These are available only to seniors in 12th grade who may submit up to 2 portfolios plus any individual entries that they'd like to enter. Each portfolio must include 6 works and a personal statement and an artist statement. And you can find more information and guidelines on portfolios and all of the other categories on our website at artandwriting.org. There is also an entry fee of $7 per individual entry and $25 per portfolio entry. Fee waivers are available to anyone who needs them, so please feel free to use them at your own discretion. And submissions opened on September 1st. And deadlines do vary by region starting on December 1st. So you can find your deadline by visiting the My Region page on our website, again, at artandwriting.org. One of my colleagues will drop the link in the chat for your reference, if you don't mind. Okay. And now a little bit about scholarships and cash awards. So we do offer several types of scholarship awards. For most of the awards, the direct awards, winners decide how their scholarships are dispersed, meaning it can go directly to a school or a program or to the student to put towards a later payment. In the past, winners have used their awards to fund a summer program, buy supplies for a creative project, or pay tuition. Also just want to kind of give a shout out to our portfolio scholarships. Again, these are only available for seniors in 12th grade, but the gold medal portfolio award, that is $10,000 for teens, and then $1,000 for their educator. And then the silver medal portfolio award is $1,000 scholarships for teens and $250 for educators. And then you'll also see on the second half of the slide, tuition scholarship awards are paid directly to the program or college or university of your choice, wherever you're attending. Also, some of these awards come with cash prizes for educators, as I mentioned. Again, you can find information about each of the scholarship offerings that we have and how to apply, again, on our website. And so some of you, many of you are probably wondering how works are actually selected. So first and foremost, the entries undergo an award selection process where jurors cannot access the teen artist's name, gender, or ethnicity. This way to ensure that entries are judged purely based on merit. So this is actually why the Scholastic Awards ask that you don't provide identifiers such as your name, age, race, ethnic background, regional location, etc., in your actual work title. So judges make their decisions based on the excellence of 3 core criteria. The first one is originality, second is technical skill, and the third is emergence of personal voice or vision. So when judges are actually going through the process of selecting works to receive awards, a lot of the questions, or some of the questions that they may ask themselves are, is the submission original? Is it different, surprising, or unexpected? Does the submission go beyond what began as a classroom assignment? Does the submission demonstrate technical skill? The importance of technical skill, again, lies in how the student uses their technique and tools to communicate their ideas, concepts, and expressions in an innovative way. And then the last, one of the other questions that they may ask is there a personal voice or vision here in the piece? Is it unique? Does it make you curious? Are you moved by it? All of our panelists, like I said here, have all been jurors before, so they can share even more about what they look for in works. And so with that, I don't want to take too much more of your time here, so we can now turn it over to Daniel, if you want to kick it off our panel discussion and introduce our panelists.
Thank you so much, Manny. I'm really excited to be here and to talk with you all. To get started, I just want to give each of you an opportunity actually to introduce yourself and to tell us a little bit about you, your work, your experience evaluating entries to the Scholastic Awards. And and then we'll dive into some questions. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Shante Arroyo. I am the Arts and Education Coordinator for Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture, a small arts council in Northern California. I'm also the affiliate for the NorCal region. We serve about 7 different counties, and we've recently taken over the arts portion. So we do art and writing now, and I'm really excited to learn more. So for me, I know that they had mentioned maybe an artistic discipline. I myself am also a writer, so I've been on the submitting side, and I definitely can empathize. So I hope this is helpful for all of you.
May I go next?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm honored to be here. My name is Cesar Melgar, and I am born and raised in the city of Newark, New Jersey. It's the city where I've been inspired, and there are a lot of things that are going on in the city, and I'm just very inspired to document it. And I'm also very involved in with the local city government. I do some work for them, and also a lot of my work lately has been involved with like the environment. Like we've been getting a lot of flooding and things like that hitting our region, as many of you know. So I'm just honored to be part of documenting all that. And I'm honored to be here. I was a juror in 2020 for photography, and there was just so much beautiful work that we came across. And honestly, it was very hard to decide, to pick good work. It was there's so much of it.
Thank you.
All right, I'll jump in from Newark as well. I'm Donna Kessinger. My pronouns are she, her. I'm working with Galleria Faro and the schools in North Jersey. I'm also a curator, and I run my own artist space in Matawan. And I'm a painter, and I also work in digital video, like feminist oral history projects in the world. I'm just excited to see all the art that's coming in, and I think we're going to have a really good show at Galleria Faro. So bring it on.
Fantastic.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here. My name is Kenson Strong. I go by he, him pronouns, and I am the interim associate director of the Graduate Studies program at School of the Museum of Fine Arts, Tufts University. Super long title. I myself have been the affiliate for both the Art and Writing Award region for Massachusetts for about 4 years now. I'll be going into my 4th year this year. And I'm a sculptor and installation artist myself. I have my first show with the Boston Sculptors Gallery coming up this December, which I'm super excited for. And my work employs both light installation and text-based work. So I find great joy in looking at both the art and the writing submissions, since my own work utilizes both mediums.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. It's great to meet you and get to know you a little bit better. So first question here is, I just want to invite you all to think about an outstanding piece of art or writing that you've seen in the Scholastic Awards. And maybe you could describe it for us or tell us what stood out to you about this work and why it stuck with you. Let's see, Shante, you want to kick us off again?
Sure, I'm happy to. So for me, it was actually one of our American Voices winners last year. She did a work that was really important to her, just in terms of her ancestry. She focused on kind of a modern retelling of a true story of the Igbo tribe that was brought over in slave ships. And what stuck out to me and what made it so, really what made it so memorable was the amount of passion that she had put into it. You can tell that she spent a lot of time on this one piece, and it was the only piece she submitted as well. And so overall, I think it's just when it's important to you, that translates in the actual work. And for the judges, it's so much easier for us to really feel the emotion that the writer was feeling or the creator was feeling of a piece of art if they're feeling that in that moment.
I love that. Cesar, do you have a work or a thought?
There's not one particular piece that I enjoyed the most. There was a lot of strong work. The work that mostly resonated to me were things that where the artist, the photographer delved into their own emotions, whether it was joy, whether it was anger, loneliness, and also like I'm a black and white photographer, so I really appreciated like people who were able to like explore color also. There was just there were also a lot of images where like the photographer like constructed a world. That was just, it's just interesting to see all the different kind of perspectives and voices that were used. So I just think that you should just go forward with your own vision and trust it.
Thank you. Kenson, do you have a work that stands out?
Oh, it's so hard to pick just one, to be honest. You know, I think generally the ones that really touch me are ones that explore a lot of personal experience and are really vulnerable in sharing experiences from what they see in their own world, and doing it in very innovative, original ways with high technical skill. The one that really comes to mind was one of our American Visions nominees last year. It's a video piece starting with a drag queen coming out of a nightclub, super fierce, you know, stomping it out, but then gets to their car and there's a mom and her son in the car, and the mom tries to cover the son's eyes from seeing the drag queen. And the drag queen gets in the car, whips off her wig, starts to sob profusely, and then the little boy who the mom tries to cover their eyes, the little boy knocks on the car window, is actually a cancer patient, whips off his wig, and then a lipstick or a crayon draws on the car window, "Brave." And it was such a striking video piece. It was very short, 2 minutes, but it had a great beginning, middle, and an end. So that was a really great standout piece for me.
It's going to be hard to follow that, but I'll try. I'm overwhelmed by the high level of art that comes in through the students as a curator working in the field with artists in museums and contemporary art spaces. All I would say is follow your instinct, follow your heart, be true to yourself, and use the skills that you're being taught and be passionate. But I can't think of one thing. The one thing that did stick out in my mind was the pencil drawings that would come out looking like a photograph. And then complete opposite, like abstract painting with no representation at all. So it's really across the board. But that's what makes it great for me.
Love that. So as Manny said, the criteria for evaluating the awards are originality, skill, and the emergence of a personal voice or vision. And I'm just curious how you consider those criteria when you're evaluating entries to the awards. Cesar, maybe you want to kick us off here?
Sure. So I'm very understanding that the students that are submitting their works are teenagers, that they are young, that they have like their whole life ahead of them. So I'm not so like, you know, what I want to see when I'm selecting a work is really like a seed for growth, and just you can feel when somebody puts their heart into a piece of work, and that goes like 100 miles when it comes to having somebody relate to your work.
I love that.
I'll just say, speak your truth.
Mhm.
Speak.
For me, what I also focus on is just, art is very much a language that we can all speak and understand. It's a form of communication. So does that person have something to tell me? That's the main thing I'm thinking about when I'm judging. And, like Caesar said, we understand that these are students who are just starting out. I'm not going to be hypercritical of anyone. I just want to know, do you have a story to tell, and are you passionate about it?
Kenson, what do you think about the criteria?
Yeah, I second everything that y'all are saying. And the way that I sort of imagine all of these criteria is sort of backwards. So I start with the personal voice or vision. Does the student have something that they want to say about the world or the experience that they're seeing? And are they presenting it in an original way? And then are they executing with high technical skill? That's sort of how I sort of see these criteria.
I love that. Shantae, you mentioned also evaluating some of the writing. Do you think differently about the criteria when you're evaluating writing compared to art?
I can't say it's super different. Like I said, I don't tend to focus too much on, writing specifically grammar. I mean, grammar is very important, don't get me wrong, but I'm not gonna dock someone huge points for misspelling a word. It's more about the actual, the substance of what it is you're trying to say. And that goes for art or writing.
Love that. All right, my next question here. How would you advise students who are trying to decide which of their works to enter into the awards? And this is probably actually especially relevant right now, because now is the time to enter your work. The deadlines are coming up. We've got just a few weeks here left to get your work entered. So what advice do you have to help choose what to enter?
May I go?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I hope nobody's procrastinating, but when it comes to a deadline, I love to give myself just, I can only speak from experience. I like to give myself like just as much time as I can to prepare. So let's say there's a deadline, or for example, submitting to Scholastic, I'll immediately like maybe think of what are the pieces of work that I have that right away I feel strongly about. I'll either make like a little print of the work or put it on my wall, or put it somewhere where I can see it all the time, and just give it a break. I come back to it, I keep coming back to it, and I refine my submission, and I give myself a lot of time to live with the work before I submit it. And I just think that makes for a very strong submission. And also, if there's anything that you might doubt isn't something that you like or love, then from my experience, I would just chuck it and not use it at all. Just totally follow your heart. It can't take you to the wrong direction.
Love that.
My advice is quality over quantity. We get a lot of students who think submitting upwards of 10 is a good idea just because it gives them more opportunity. But what I've seen is it means you're not paying as much attention to detail with each separate thing you're submitting. And so even just submitting one or two where, like Caesar said, you've taken time to live with it and really refine it, that's much better and will take you much farther in the Scholastic Awards than submitting 15 different pieces.
It's great advice.
Yeah. I would also add, when you're trying to select works to enter, take risks sometimes. Like if you're sharing a piece that's really vulnerable and you're kind of worried about sharing it, it might be the best time to share it actually. And I remember one of To give a personal example, I was doing an open studio once, and I had written this poem that was one of the most vulnerable pieces I've ever done about myself, and it was going to be an installation where I wrote it on the wall. So it's front and center, huge, on this big wall that everyone would see. And I was so scared that I spent the entire night in a different room of the gallery, offered to bartend, do whatever I needed to not even be in the room with that piece, because I was so scared of sharing those thoughts and those experiences with people, to the point where I just had to be in a different room from it. And at the end of the night, so many people came up to me and said that they were so touched and by how emotional it was, and that they got so much out of it. And I think that was a huge risk for me to share something like that. And I think those are, my point is, if you're kind of scared, that might be a good thing.
Love that. Donna, how do you approach choosing what work to enter?
It's hard to follow these guys. As an artist, I have a crew of fellow artists and friends and family that I run my paintings by, because there are times when I struggle with my work and I think, ugh, this is just not working. So I'll take a picture with my phone and I'll either just send it over to them or put it on social media and get instant feedback. And that's something that you could do as well. Like, share it with your friends, share it with your mom and dad or siblings, friends, whatever, like, and then send it over. You'll know what's right, that, I guess. But sometimes sitting with it and sharing it makes the difference. Then you don't chuck it, or you do, I don't know.
Love that. So much of being a maker, a creative, is about community, I think. And so find the other people in your community that are also entering the Scholastic Awards and talk to them about what they're entering. And I love it. So this next question actually is building off a little bit of what Kenson was talking earlier. What advice do you have for students who may be nervous about using their authentic voice, knowing that their work will be viewed by others, and in the case of the Scholastic Awards, could even be published? So how do you get the courage to use an authentic voice?
Start with a deep breath and almost meditate and your light will come through.
I would say that I think a lot of people, because I've been in the situation of submitting things, they can get kind of scared of what seems like the hyper competitive kind of process of going through Scholastic. But I think a big thing is also to kind of silence your inner critic, because I think we all have that little voice in our head that likes to say really awful things to us. And so it's about kind of noticing those thoughts and even being thankful of it, because it's trying to protect you in a sense, but also having an understanding of how to silence it. And another big thing that I would say is finding, like Daniel said, a community, the cheerleaders, the people who are going to be willing to help you every step of the way. I know many people have educators that are more than happy to assist with editing or with just having a one-on-one session of, how can we get you through this? Family, friends, finding that community, I think is a big way to kind of silence that voice and help make it easier to share more and more of yourself.
Love that.
I think that your unique voice, I think your own unique voice matters a lot. I think that you have a very unique perspective, no matter who you are, you have a story to tell, I hope. And I'm not sure, personally speaking, I'm not sure if you ever stop feeling that little bit of nervousness, but I think that's a good thing. I think it's good to feel nervous, and it's good to be presented with wanting to jumping into your own voice and your own beliefs. And in this time, like during all this, what's going on in the world, I think it's important to be authentic to yourself.
I would add also, one of the biggest realizations that I learned in art school about sharing very personal things is that your work is not going to be for everyone. And I think once I realized that, I got over that fear of sharing and wanting everyone to like my work, and just realizing that the artwork or the writing pieces I make will not be for all the viewers out there, you know. But if the fact that I'm a bit nervous to share something probably means it means something to me, and that it'll mean something to someone else too. And if you can touch a couple folks, I think you've done your job as an artist and writer, and it's not about pleasing everyone. So I think that ideology really helped me through the fear of sharing.
Great. All right, I have a couple of other questions here I'm going to pull out that hopefully aren't curveballs for you. But I've heard a lot of you talking about making work that's personal, and we're putting a lot of emphasis here on this kind of personal voice or vision and authentic voice. But do you have advice for artists or writers? Maybe they're writing fiction, maybe they're making work that's not about themselves. How should they approach something like voice or vision in their work?
Well, I think that every creator, regardless of what you create, you use your own personal experiences. So even if it's not, a biography about you, you're still using what you know and what you understand and the perspective of which you view the world as a way to not only create something, but as a way to kind of connect. So I think just using your personal experiences is extremely helpful, and aspects of yourself, the different identities and facets of who you are.
I think that when it comes to personal work or making work that is fiction, I have an anecdote to tell about a friend who is an artist, but he teaches his niece. So he teaches her basically imagination. He doesn't teach her like technique. He doesn't teach her, the other aspects of making anything. He just kind of just teaches her how to use magic, how to use her imagination. And I think that when you emphasize an imagination, you can use that for your personal work or for your fiction. I think that most importantly, imagination is important.
Yeah, I agree with Shantae in saying, even if you're writing fiction, you're probably drawing from some aspect of your experiences, whether consciously or unconsciously doing so. And I think the emphasis on personal voice sometimes, or it sounds like it has to be such deep content, but a personal experience can also be very happy. It could be joyous, it could be miracle. So you can still draw from a lot of personal deep experiences from all these ranges of emotion and channel that into your fiction that you're creating as well.
And follow up with the technique and the skill, like use the same care that you're using in any other form of art, but you're not necessarily exposing your own personal story, but it will reflect, or it could reflect, or it may just be something that you pull out of the air and create your own story around, which is equally fun to read and experience as a juror, and to create as an artist. and writer. Go for it.
So the Scholastic Awards doesn't have predefined prompts or topics for you to enter. You can enter work on any topic and with any content. So my next question here is about the freedom of expression and how you balance that when you're evaluating work. How do you do you see work that is difficult for you to evaluate because of its content, and how do you approach that?
If I could kind of ask you, Daniel, do you mean like work that is dealing with really tough subject matter specifically?
It could be, yeah, it could be work that's difficult because of the subject matter or anything. We'll see sometimes work with profanity or with,
Sure.
just any work that might be shocking or unexpected, or maybe it's an opinion that is different from your opinion. How do you evaluate that?
Yeah, for me, I really am not shocked by much. I think those of us who are involved with scholastic art and writing, we are all art lovers from the beginning. So we've seen a lot, things that we agree with, don't agree with, what have you. I think for all of us, and I don't mean to speak for everyone, but I think we all we have such a passion for being able to hear these new young voices of these different generations that are going to be leaders. We're excited, I think, to just read anything and everything. As long as you're passionate, we want to read it, we want to see it, we want to be around it.
Love that.
Yeah, like Shantae said, like we can't get shocked, and hopefully as I get older, I'm not getting any more conservative or anything. But so, no, I try not to look at anything through predisposed eyes of judgment. I try to keep myself as pretty level as I can.
Donna,
do you have thoughts?
The only phrase
put you on the spot
is coming into my mind. Open-minded. We're very open-minded, and it does go back to the same filter of, if it's good work and it has passion, do it. See where it goes.
That's great.
We've probably, I don't know, I can't say that we've seen it. I'd like to see something that I've never seen before. So shock me. Let's go.
Kenson, did you have any thoughts or?
Yeah, I love the shocking work. I love seeing how young artists and writers are dealing with tough subject matter, because it's so real. And I think it's better to be honest about the world that we are in rather than pretend that it's not there. And how you approach it creatively with the technique and the skill is, that's sort of what elevates those moments.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so we have time for one more question before we move on to taking questions from our audience here. But we're going to make this a lightning round. So just real quick, and I'll go. I'll go in the order here on my screen. So I'll call out names. But give us a final do or don't. Like what should teens do or not do? And Kenson, you're up first.
I would say be mindful if you're submitting an assignment that 30 other students are also submitting.
Good one. Caesar? Oh, sorry.
You can go, Shantae. All right, I'll go. Okay, so do be passionate and do not procrastinate. I don't think, from my personal experience, procrastination just does not work. I can try to make it, I can try to tell myself it does, but at the end of the day, you'll make stronger work if you really put your heart into it. Like, that's not a cliche. Like,
Appreciate that. All right, Shantae.
I would say find a community, even if it's just a friend that's submitting with you, or an educator, an English teacher, art teacher, what have you, that will be there and answer questions. Find that community that is going to not only be your cheerleaders, but also hold you accountable. You know, you can say you're going to enter, but having those people behind you, it does almost make you obligated to. And, you know, not procrastinating is a big one.
All right, Donna, bring us home.
All right. Use your voice. Follow your heart. And make it good.
Love it. All right. So we're going to take some questions now. I'm going to hand things over to my colleagues here who have been collecting and reading and sorting through all of the questions you've been putting in the Q&A. If you have a question, you haven't put it in the Q&A yet, get it over there. That's and then if you see other questions that are important to you, give them an upvote just so that we know that there's a lot of people with that question burning up.
One of the first questions that I see here, and several folks have asked around this theme, is can the work itself be about ethnicity and or gender, or is it okay to mention one's race or gender in a poem?
Yeah.
It's a great question.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, that's a huge part of who you are as a person. So absolutely. I mean, I think it's almost a necessity to use, you know, aspects of yourself. And, you know, I will say a lot of the works that I've seen that have done really, really well in Scholastic are works that do focus on how they experience life. The reality is we do live in a world where you're treated in a certain way depending on those aspects. So use that.
I think Shantae really nailed it. Like, I can follow up with her and say that, you know, your upbringing is something that you can't separate yourself from. You know, it's good to tap into your family, like, because they're, especially as a teenager, like your family is, and the people closest to you are just important to you. You're with them for the majority of your life. So yeah, I just don't think you can separate yourself at the end of the day. You know, it's totally fine, and it's something that you should explore.
I agree.
Yes, I second all of that.
Great. All right, what's our next question here?
Another question that was pretty popular was kind of asking, what work were you turned off by? What were you not impressed by?
I have something. Just overly commercial, like marketing work bugs me. Like graphic design, less passion, more technique. Maybe go for more passion combined with technique.
For me, what I saw a lot of was something Kenson actually brought up earlier, where you have 30 students all from the same class submit something that was written from a prompt. And not that those aren't good, but typically, you know, you're not putting your all into those kinds of works. So something like that, where you're just submitting to submit and you're not really super engaged with what you're doing. That's kind of a turnoff because you see it so often and you can always tell.
Yeah, to follow up with that, that was going to be my response too. In that, seeing so clearly like 30 of the same assignments, it's tough to find the originality and the personal voice in those, and that's two of the criteria for judging. And though, of course, in pedagogy, giving assignments is crucial in teaching. So I think the assignments themselves need to be a little bit more fluid and a little bit more ambiguous in terms of how you're getting your students to create, so that perhaps it's the same assignment, but all 30 projects are coming out either visually different, personally different, something technically different.
As judges, I believe that we can, some of the work that turned me off was like just stuff that just seemed lazy. It just didn't seem like, and this goes back to what we were saying earlier, there's just, you can tell when somebody's not putting their all into something.
Fantastic. All right. Do we have another question?
Yes, we do. This question, we may need some support from the Scholastic Awards staff, but what percentage of entries are given an award in a category?
That's a great question. And we probably actually have some qualified panelists who can answer.
I can answer that if you'd like. As the affiliate, we have anywhere from 5 to 7% in a category that receives gold, 7 to 10% receive silver, and then 10 to 15% receive honorable mention.
Those are rough approximations. There will be little variations, but that's a general overview of the awards there. Thank you. All right, do we have another question?
Sure. This one was, you mentioned that passion is one way that you evaluate art and writing. How would that appear to grab the attention of a judge in the form of a fictional story?
Compelling narrative. Good story. Good story.
I think if I can tell that it's been looked at and proofread and edited more than once by the writer, you can usually tell when someone submitted last minute and they didn't proofread it, because you'll find really silly little mistakes. So when I can tell that a piece has been refined over and over again, and there's really been care taken, regardless of genre or category, I mean, that's what stands out, really.
Yeah, and again, from what Donna was saying, the narrative, the storytelling, even if it's fiction, am I enveloped in that environment? Do I want to continue to read? And when it's over, do I think to myself, I want a next part?
And the judges might not know if a work is fiction or not. Just because the work is in the first person doesn't mean it's autobiographical. That's a great fiction might throw off a juror there, or
And I would say the same for some of the categories like journalism or, critical essay, which, sometimes you don't get that personal voice because you're talking about, news articles and such, or essays on science experiments. But for those, I've read some of the most brilliant pieces where I just can't stop reading because I'm so fascinated by the topic that you're describing and the way that you're going about describing the topic.
that's great. All right, do we have another question?
Yes, we do. How do we decide whether to submit poems individually or as a collection?
That's a great question. I might take that unless one of the panelists is jumping at it. So it's up to you. You can, in the poetry category, you can enter an individual poem, or you can enter a collection of poems at once. And to be honest, one of the biggest things you might consider is the length. There is an overall limit. So if you have one long poem, that might be an individual. But if you have several small poems, you might submit them as a collection. And I would give the additional advice that a collection of poems is as good as the weakest of the poems in the collection. So don't feel like you have to add another poem just because, you know, focus on your strongest work. Any other thoughts to piggyback there?
Yeah, I would just add to, like when I see collection of poems, I almost think of them as portfolios, like the senior portfolios too, in which you're trying to create a narrative amongst all of the pieces together. So really editing down and curating which ones you're putting together, and how they relate to each other in the order. And there's so much that you can sort of curate in that. Not that each poem has to be about the same topic, but they should lead into each other really fluidly and make you think that this all belongs together. So not just like randomly, oh, I have 6 poems, let's put them together and call it a day.
Same kind of thinking in the portfolio for visual. When you see too much eclecticness or difference in all the pieces, it just works better if there's cohesiveness and it reads together like a story. In a different way, but similar visually.
Very similar. All right, do we have another question?
Yeah, so some people have asked about submitting past work or submitting again. Can you submit work that was previously submitted in past years but never won anything? And to kind of add on to that with some other questions, do you have any advice for people that have submitted in the past and are submitting again?
Great questions. Someone want to take it? I can get the first part. You can submit work that you've submitted in the past if it didn't receive an award and if you've made a substantial change to it. So if you've really, you know, and not just fixing the misspellings, like actually like gone in and revised it. There's also, if you're a senior and you're entering a portfolio, you can include works that received awards in past years, but you can only include them in your portfolio. And so it's really important when you're entering that there's a little checkbox that you can check on to make sure that you're entering that work as part of the portfolio only and not as an individual submission. But the second part I want to open up more to the panel here, which was the second part of that question was about advice for students who they entered last year, they didn't win, they want to enter again this year. What advice do you have for them?
The advice I would have for them is to find someone to work with. I think getting as many eyes on your work is the best way to improve because you get constructive criticism, you get feedback. If you're kind of in your own bubble and editing your own work and refining it, you're not really getting the same kind of feedback you would be getting if you opened it up to more people. So definitely think about finding, you know, 1 or 2 people that are willing to read your work and give you some feedback.
To add on to what Shantae said, it's also very good to get advice from people who aren't artists. Like you don't necessarily have to get the advice from somebody in the same discipline as you or somebody who writes or does the opposite of what you do. Sometimes just people's opinions, like sometimes my mom's opinion is just as good as a seasoned artist, you know. But yeah, it's good to not just be stuck so much in your own head. It's important to, like, the process of making something. It's good to bounce these ideas off of other people. Like, talking really helps.
I would say also don't be afraid of failure, and don't be discouraged if you didn't receive anything, and think of all the professional learning opportunities there are even in the process. You know, as a professional artist and writer, you spend a lot of time writing applications for grants, for galleries, for shows, books, you know, etc. You name it. And the professional practice you get by just going through this process will really benefit you when you're a professional.
True, and just don't give up. Keep trying. Make it a little better. Try it again. There might be new panelists, you know, somebody might be new in the group who sees something different in your work. Maybe you're a year older.
Yeah, failure is just as important as part of the process. Like, we've all failed at one point in our lives, and many point in our lives. So it's cliche, but get back up and try again. If it's something that you really are passionate about, like, keep pushing. Don't let things like that set you back.
I think we have time for a few more questions. Is that right, Manny? We can keep taking.
Yep, we have some more time.
Great. We have a couple of questions around what jurors are looking for in writing entries. So is there a rubric that panelists use for writers? What specifically makes one piece of writing stand out much more amongst other very well-written pieces of writing? And what are we looking for in poetry submissions in particular in terms of style and form?
All great questions. Anyone want to tackle one of them?
Could you repeat those questions one more time?
Certainly. So some folks are asking about what judges are looking for in terms of writing entries, if there is a writing rubric that you all use. And sorry, I'm just trying to find the questions. I had already dismissed them. And what makes a particular piece stand out amongst other well-written pieces?
I would say in terms of a rubric, at least for the region of Massachusetts, there's not like a structured rubric. We encourage our jurors to still go back on those 3 criteria as sort of the most important pieces. The technical skills, so did you spell check? Did you check your grammar? And if you're, you know, purposefully playing with grammar and spelling, is it done intentionally? That's very obvious to the reader. The originality function and then the personal voice, those are the criteria and rubric, if you will, for grading both art and writing.
What was the second part of that question?
The second part is what makes a work stand out compared to other well-written works?
I'm going to feel like I'm repeating here, but I mean, I think we've all kind of said, you know, it's the refinement that's done, the passion that's in it. And I mean, just of course, how it actually flows together. You know, it's kind of hard because every judge is going to be different. And I think all of us here, especially the affiliates, you know, we always try to get judges that come from different walks of life, who have different experiences, so that students can really delve into their work in a way where it's not going to be affected by how the judges will react to it. So I mean, it's kind of everything we've already said. Being passionate about what you're writing, that's what's going to make it stand out, even amongst other well-written works, you know. And the judges themselves, they'll be the deciding factors, really.
And so going back to a point I made earlier about your work not being for everyone and not trying to make your work for everyone, and though we have this criteria that we're following, to remember you shouldn't be writing your pieces for the judges. You're writing the pieces for yourself, and I think that's what makes it actually stand out to the judges, is that they can't tell you're just trying to write it for them, if that makes sense. I hope I'm explaining that correctly.
Yeah, totally. I think we have a few more questions.
Yes, so do you read the artist statement and personal statement or writing component for the scholarships before you look at the work or after?
This is a great question, and I'm gonna tackle it first, just to talk a little bit about the process that happens with the national scholarships, and then if you want to jump in about some of the regional processes. But the way that the national scholarships are chosen, there's some variation between the different scholarships, but all of the work is first evaluated, just like all of the other works, in their individual categories. So poetry work is evaluated against poetry, and painting and etc. And it's all the three criteria: the originality, skill, and the emergence of a personal voice or vision. And then all of that is viewed without a knowledge of who the artists are. So the judges, they don't know the artist, and that means they're not looking at the scholarship statements. Then there's, depending on the direct scholarship, or depending on the scholarship opportunity, there are additional panels that may look at the work that do look at the statement for the scholarship, and then they decide those. In the specific case of the portfolio awards, the gold medal portfolio and silver with distinction portfolio are determined by a scholarship committee, and they will evaluate the personal statements, which the judges have not seen. So the committee will review the statements, but the judges have not. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question? And you can learn more about what we're looking for with the statements there's a scholarship section of the website. So if you go to artandwriting.org/scholarships, you can read about the different scholarships and what kinds of questions to answer in the statements there. But they do matter. It does. It's also important when the judges are looking at the work to determine scholarships. It matters that the work actually meets the criteria for that scholarship. So If you're applying for the New York Life Award, your work should be about a personal loss or grief that you've experienced. If you're applying for the One Earth Award, your work should be about climate change, and have an actual point of view on climate change. So read the scholarship descriptions, and if your work meets the criteria, apply for those scholarships, opt in for those scholarships. Did anyone else want to add thoughts there, or should we jump to the next question? Do we have another question from the audience?
Yes, we do. What advice would you offer about still having the drive and passion to make pieces that say a statement when it can feel really tiring to look around and see all the horrible things going on? How have you personally looked at current events and still been able to make art about it without getting bogged down by the reality of these heavy issues?
Good question.
I would say taking breaks is one of the best things you can do for yourself in that case. We're human, so we can't always be doing. Sometimes we have to rest, and I think that would be it, and it really depends on the person. But I think resting and coming back refreshed is the best piece of advice I could give you.
That's such a great question. I think that you can take that anger, that energy that you feel when you do watch the news, or you are seeing like horrible things in the world occurring, take that energy and put it somewhere else. It doesn't have to be necessarily, you don't necessarily have to respond to what's going on in the world, but you can take that feeling and channel it somewhere else. And like Shantae also said, like breaks are good. Like reconnect with nature. If you live in a city, like it's good to get away. It's just good to like when you feel exhausted like that, leave and come back. You have all the time in the world, honestly.
And just be sure to balance any of your art making and writing practices. If it is really heavy, to do activities that are uplifting as well. So if you have an activity that you really enjoy, or a hobby you really enjoy, in those breaks, I would say definitely indulge yourself in those spaces that bring you happiness too.
Right. Spend time with your favorite pet or take a walk. But then go back to it and really feel it. That's what passion is. Feels. Sorry, she got into catnip. Give us.
Right, I think we have time for 2 more questions from the audience here.
Great. What separates a gold key from a silver key or honorable mention?
I think all I'll say to that is, focusing on where you're going to place is the easiest way to lose focus on your actual, the piece you're actually trying to create. It's great to get recognition and everything, but that shouldn't be the primary concern when you're submitting, because it really just depends. It depends on various factors, the judges that are being used, the other people who submitted. There's not really a clear-cut answer to that question, and that shouldn't be the main focus anyway. It's about submitting and having fun, and being able to to use your voice and have a platform, which is not very common, especially for people in the age group we're talking about. You know, it's about being heard, and the judges, they'll hear your voices, and that should be the main focus, I think.
Yeah, and I'll probably answer with the same answer I did for one of the previous questions, in that, again, following Shantae, you shouldn't be making work for the jurors to try and satisfy what you think they'll want. And that, I think, truly separates some of the is that you're just making work for yourself, and you're just making the work, regardless of where it's placing. And that's sort of what creates this moment where you're really bringing out your personal voice then, and you're not trying to please someone else. Because some of the greatest artists and writers, you know, for example, you look and you're like, oh, they're unapologetically themselves, and you can tell instantly that it's a piece by that particular artist or writer.
I agree. I strongly agree. I can't say anything better than that.
All right, let's do one more question.
A question that has been upvoted is, how do you balance feedback of others versus staying true to your authentic voice?
I believe that takes some trial and error. Definitely when I was younger, I used to like really hold other people's advice as like the truest of the true, you know, and they're 100% right. But eventually, like with experience and just working on your craft and honing it, you can learn to differentiate advice that you can take or advice that you can just leave. Like not everything that everybody tells you is 100%, you know? So I just believe that comes with time. That comes with experience.
Perhaps one way of sifting through feedback too is to go, if you are seeking out feedback, I always tell some of my students in the graduate program when we're doing critique classes, is to think of questions that you would want to ask them about your work that you want to be informed of, rather than just letting them give you feedback from every angle. Think very specifically about what you're questioning in your work and what you want feedback on, and then ask those questions. And then that way you get the feedback that you're looking for, and then it makes it easier to sift through what you would like to keep and what you would like to discard.
Just listen to yourself above all else, and be true to yourself. Back to your voice again. It's good to have a little reflection, but it's ultimately about you, I think.
Awesome. Well, we got through a ton of questions. That was pretty cool. You guys said so many things that I just think are just super valuable pieces of advice that I think a lot of teens will walk away with. And anyone who's been kind of lost in the process and just really not knowing either where to begin with their work, or if they're just really stuck in the middle, I think you guys really, yeah. I hope this was very helpful for all of you out there. We definitely want to see your work. So we are almost coming up on time. So this is actually going to conclude our Q&A portion of our session today. But before we close out, we're just going to switch back over to the presentation. There's just a couple more things I want to go over before we close out. So, in terms of next steps, some of you may already have started this process, your entry process. Some of you may not. So, I'm just going to kind of lay it out here for everyone to see. So, the first thing when it comes to the entry process, of course, is creating your account at artandwriting.org. The second one being is in your account is where you're going to upload your piece of original work. And that's also where you'll be able to opt in for scholarship consideration. And then the last piece of actually completing your entry is uploading a signed entry form that would be signed by you and a parent or guardian, and also completing your payment or, as I mentioned earlier, a fee waiver form in order to complete your entry. And again, deadlines do vary by region and by art and writing starting on December 1st. So please, please, please don't wait until the last minute. I think that was one of the key advices we learned today also is do not procrastinate because the date comes up much faster than you think and you definitely don't want to be scrambling. So yes, be sure to check your art and writing deadlines. You can either check it in your account after you create it, or you can check it on the My Region page on our website. And that's pretty much it. So, thank you all again for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Again, I hope you learned a lot here today. Just please feel free to visit these resources on this page for more information about the program. And always do feel free to email us at info@artandwriting.org with any questions that you have. Or you can email your regional program directly by finding their contact info on your regional microsite. We also created a series of step-by-step videos to help students and educators navigate their accounts and walk through on how to complete entries. We found that it's a lot of students have found them valuable. So if some of my colleagues want to drop those into the chat. And then again, we're also going to be following up via email with a recording of this session for your records, where we'll also include all of these useful links for you to help you, have all the information that you need in order to be able to enter the awards comfortably and confidently. So that's all we have for today. Again, thank you so much for joining. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Huge thank you to our jurors and panelists here for sharing your time and wisdom with all of us. I'm seeing so many thank yous in the chat for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So honored.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Manny. Bye.
Oh.